right. Thank you so much for coming. I'm surprised to see so many people here. I thought that to try to do this at 6 p.m. was that I'd be speaking to an empty room. So I'm thrilled that you're all here. And I realized that I'm the only one standing between you and a glass of wine. So I promise I won't run over, and I may even finish a little early. My name is Bill Adair. I am the Knight Professor at Duke University in North Carolina in the United States. Before coming to Duke, I started the fact-checking website PolitiFact. I worked 23 years as a reporter, much of that time in Washington, covering the White House and Congress and the U.S. Supreme Court for the St. Petersburg Times, a great newspaper from Florida that's now known as the Tampa Bay Times. And I'm going to talk a little bit about fact-checking to start, because fact-checking is a unique kind of journalism in that it has great archival value. So a lot of journalism is for the moment. We want to know the news today, it's valuable today, but it's a lot less valuable in a week or in 2 weeks. What's different about fact-checking is that politicians repeat the same lines. We know we've seen this, that when they do television interviews, when they give speeches, they often say the same things over and over again. So a news article, a fact check that was done a week ago still has value today because the politician is going to repeat that line, and you're going to hear that line again and again. The same thing for campaign advertising, like TV ads and YouTube videos. They get played over and over again. So fact-checking is unique in that it has great value for weeks after it's created. And that makes it ideal for automation. And one of the things that we've come to realize as we have really done things in automation is that the fact check that was written 2 months ago, 3 months ago, still has great value. And I'm going to demonstrate for you today some things that will show you how we tap into the database of fact checks that were published some weeks ago. So just a little bit of background about the dream of automated fact checking. So when I started PolitiFact in 2007, I immediately got emails from readers who said, you know, it would be cool if you could get fact-checking up on a television screen so that while I'm watching a politician, there was a pop-up on the screen that said, that statement that Barack Obama or John McCain just said is half true or false or whatever. So the idea of automated fact-checking has been around as long as fact-checking has been around. And what's changed, and for many years I have carried on my laptop a kind of dreamy PowerPoint presentation about what automated fact-checking could look like. I created that in 2010 and began to think about what it might look like. And I came to the conclusion in really 2010, and then even several years after that, that it was still a long way away, that the dream of getting that instant pop-up fact-checking was a distant dream. But a lot of things have changed, and the progress that we've seen in artificial intelligence, in the ability to use the cloud for storage and to power apps now makes us realize that we can do automated fact-checking now. And so what I'm going to do now is sort of walk you through some of the projects that we've done at Duke. And my emphasis today is to get beyond the dream and show you that we're really doing automated fact-checking today. And that is something I'm really proud of, and I'm going to show you things that we're doing both to help the journalists who fact-check using bots, and also our first iteration at an automated fact-checking app for your iPhone. So we're calling this automated journalism in real life. So let's talk about the sort of 3 different projects that I'm going to show you. So the first is, should I use this? Share the Facts. And Share the Facts is a tagging system that is now used by most of the fact checkers in the world. And we helped create it at Duke, and then we built the first fact-checking app for the Amazon Echo, which many of you know as Alexa. And so I'm going to show you that. Then I'm going to show you FactStream, which is a new app that we just introduced in January for the State of the Union address in the United States. And it is a single app where you're able to get fact checks from the Washington Post, PolitiFact, factcheck.org, and eventually other fact checkers, and eventually that app will be available throughout the world. And then finally, the Tech and Check alerts. These are essentially a bot that finds sentences to fact check. And this grew out of a conversation that I had with a computer scientist from the University of Texas. And now our bots are being created by Duke students who are writing the scripts that are finding the claims for the fact checkers to check. So I'll be showing you that. So I'm going to start by talking about Share the Facts. So this grew out of an idea from Glenn Kessler. Glenn is the Washington Post fact checker, and I think very much represents the spirit of collaboration among the world's fact checkers. So back in 2014, I held the first meeting of all of the world's fact checkers in London in the summer of 2014. It was the first time that we had all gotten together. And I did this working with the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg, a journalism education center. And at the time, there were just about 30 fact checkers around the world, and we all crowded into a room at the London School of Economics and realized that we're doing a lot of things the same in many countries, and that began a really collaborative spirit among the world's fact checkers. So Glenn very much typifies that, and in 2015, he had a conversation with an executive from Google in which he said, you know what Google should do? Google should put tags on fact check articles. So in search results, what Glenn wanted to see is a little tag that would say fact check. So the Google executive was very intrigued by that idea, and pretty soon I was brought in to try to make this happen. I have a unique role in that I'm very connected with the fact-checking community by the virtue of having started PolitiFact and started the International Fact-Checking Network. But I also, as now a full-time faculty member at Duke, have the kind of position where I could put together the resources and bring everyone together to create this tagging system. So I run the Duke Reporters Lab, and so I got together with Schema.org, which is an organization that sets standards for the web, and Google, and together we came up with a consistent tagging system for fact checks. Now this does not sound very exciting. It's not. It's really just code in a fact check article, but it's really valuable. Because what happens when publishers publish content on all different platforms, on all different content management systems, is that there's no simple way for a search engine to figure out what the fact check article is checking, who's being checked, what the actual statement is that's being checked. And so by creating the schema, we created a consistent way that fact checkers could enter that with their stories. So the schema is called Claim Review, and it provides a way for search engines to find fact checks. And this is not just Google. Bing and other search engines can use it also, and we can also use it for apps, because what we're doing when we create the schema is we're creating the ability to assemble a database of all fact checks in the world. Whoops, didn't mean to turn it off there. Go back to this. I'm going to just do it manually. Whoops, Okay, if you could put that back up, sorry about that. So we created an easy way that fact checkers could put the schema into their articles, and we called it Share the Facts. And Share the Facts has two components. It creates this visible widget which appears at the end of a fact check article. So if you're PolitiFact or the Washington Post, you go to our CMS, you fill out a few fields, and it generates code that creates this widget. This is shareable, so if you click share, you can post it on Twitter or Facebook, and can also be embedded like tweets. But the real value is this. This is the code that appears in the fact check article, and this is what the search engines see. And so this particular one has to do with a PolitiFact fact check. There was a local one in St. Petersburg, Florida, and it's all there. And it tells the search engine, this is a fact check on, let's see, who was the person who said this? Claim review, this is a fact check on a candidate for mayor named Rick Baker, and he made the claim that St. Petersburg had the best maintained large sewer system in 2007. So, but this is gold, because what this does is it makes all the fact checks consistent, and this is structure. For many years, many of us have been dreaming about the opportunity from structured journalism, that if you could get more publishers to think outside the box and try different ways to present their content, you would have structure that then search engines and app users and entrepreneurs could tap into. That revolution never happened because it's so hard to change a CMS, a content management system that a publisher uses. So what we did with Share the Facts is we created the structure for them. So once we did that, and once we got a lot of the fact checkers around the world to use it, Google began to treat fact checks differently. So Google now highlights fact checks in some really powerful ways. The first thing that Google did was it did exactly what Glenn had asked for. It began in Google News highlighting fact checks by just saying fact check. And that by itself is valuable. So those highlights show up in that first box if you look at the Google News homepage. And so that drives extra traffic to the fact checkers. So that was the first thing. And that happened in late 2016. Then in early 2017, Google began highlighting fact checks in search. So of course this is the bulk of Google's business, and this is an area where the fact checkers can really benefit from the increased attention. So here is how fact checks show up in search results. And they show up highlighted in a different way than a typical news article. You can see that it breaks out the claim. In this case, the Obamacare subsidies in this bill are actually greater under the Republican bill than under the current Obamacare law. The claim is by Rand Paul, who is a United States Senator. And the fact check was by factcheck.org. And its conclusion was that this spins the truth. And so if the fact checker has put in a rating like false or true or half true, it appears right there. So this was great. This was marvelous for the fact checkers because this is driving traffic to the fact checking sites. And then the final thing that Google did was when it redid Google News, it actually created a dedicated fact check box where the latest fact checks appear. So if you go to Google News, depending on which country you're in, you may see this fact check box. It is not available in every country. It has to be a country with a substantial amount of fact checking. I don't know if it's available here in Italy. So I showed you rich text snippets. So the next thing that this enabled us to do, we realized that we had inadvertently created a database of fact checks. That was not our goal. Our goal all along was to highlight fact checks in search results, but we realized, hey, we have created a database of all fact checks, and we can use that for apps. So an obvious place to start was the Amazon Echo. How many of you have an Amazon Echo? Oh, not that many. Okay. How many have a Google Home? All right, just one. Okay. So, and I know that it varies by country. In the United States, the Amazon Echo is the leader in this new category of voice-activated assistants. And so you ask the Amazon Echo, you call it Alexa, and you say, Alexa, ask the fact checkers, and then ask it a question, and if it finds a match, it will return the fact check. So I'm going to show you, and this is what it looks like. So I'm going to play a little video now of my students testing our app on the Amazon Echo. And so you'll hear them ask a series of questions, and then you'll hear a series of responses from the Echo. Oops. Not getting audio. Okay, we were getting it before. Yeah, it's connected. Oh, I know. Yeah, maybe take that out. I don't think you need that when you have HDMI in. Okay.
Again. Alexa.
Alexa, ask the fact checkers, is it true that Donald Trump wants to withdraw from NAFTA?
Is it true that many recent migrants into the U.S. have been charged with terrorism?
Can the president not have a conflict of interest?
Is it true that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote because of millions of cases of voter fraud?
Washington Post rated it 4 Pinocchios when Donald Trump said that between 3 million and 5 million illegal votes caused him to lose the popular vote. PolitiFact rated it half true when Donald Trump said that the Obama administration agreed to take thousands of illegal immigrants from Australia. PolitiFact rated it mostly false when Donald Trump said that these are radical Islamic terrorists, and Hillary Clinton won't even mention the word. Washington Post rated it 2 Pinocchios when Donald Trump said that NAFTA was signed by Bill Clinton. NAFTA was given to us by Clinton. Ask me to check a fact you're wondering about.
So that was really cool when we did that. Now, it is not a, it doesn't have enough fact checks in it, so to speak, to get a high enough return rate yet, but we're getting there. And so the key is that when you ask it a question, that there's a good chance that you're going to get a fact check in response, and the right fact check. One of the problems we've had for a while, we had a Hollywood gossip fact checker in our database. And so if you asked it something about the inauguration, it would come back with a response about whether Jay-Z was going to play at the inauguration. So it's not always returning what we want it to return. But we're getting there, and we're really proud of this. It shows how automated fact-checking will work, and it's doing what our app will eventually do, which is convert voice to text, match that text against the database of fact checks, and then return the fact check in whatever form. In this case, it's reading just the sentence that was fact checked and what the rating was. So that was very promising. That was in 2016, and that was part of Share the Facts. Then we created something for Google Chrome as a browser extension in Google Chrome that we called Fact Pop-Up. And this was a browser extension that was manually powered, meaning there was a human fact checker who was listening to the debate, and when Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump said something that had been fact-checked before, the fact checker posted a link to that, and it triggered a notification in Google Chrome. And so if you had the extension on your Chrome browser, the notification popped up. And this was really astounding at the time. So this is a screen grab from the third debate. And when the timing worked out perfect. One of the things you may have noticed if you use streaming video is that streaming video often lags behind what you might see on cable or broadcast television. Often about 15 seconds, which is just the right amount of time to find the fact check, put up the notification, and trigger the message. So the timing was amazing because Clinton or Trump would say something, and immediately after, the fact check would pop up. Really cool. What was not so cool was the next time we did it during Trump's first speech to the US Congress, and then there was a delay of about 30 seconds. And so that was too long. So we were actually triggering the fact checks before Trump made the statement. So it looked like we were mind readers, that we knew what he was going to say and we knew whether it was true or false. But again, a good demonstration project of what we now are going to try to do on Apple TV and Chromecast and Roku. So after we did this, we said, hey, we've got something really special here. And so we went to some foundations and asked them to give us some money to continue building automated fact-checking tools. And we created a project that we call the Duke Tech and Check Cooperative. And the Duke Tech and Check Cooperative has 3 goals: to use automation to broaden the audience for fact-checking, so that would be through things like the apps. To use automation to help fact-checkers find claims to check. So this means the very laborious process of going through transcripts and news articles looking for things to fact-check. We have bots that do that now. And to serve as a hub for all automated fact-checking projects, because we're not the only one doing work in this area. In Great Britain, Full Fact is doing some great work, and in Argentina, Chequeado is also doing some great work. So part of our project is to link everyone and get everyone talking to each other so that we develop common standards and that we learn from each other. Our project is funded by the Knight Foundation, by the Facebook Journalism Project, and by the Craig Newmark Foundation. I don't know if you saw Craig last couple of days. He's been here in Perugia. And the Tech and Check Co-op is not just Duke, but it's also the University of Texas at Arlington, where the computer scientists who developed the bot that finds claims to check works. A brilliant computer scientist named Chen-Kai Lee. Digital Democracy, which is a project at California Polytechnic University, and BIF, which stands for the Bad Idea Factory, which is an organization run by Dan Schultz, who's an old friend of mine who I met when he was a master's student at MIT. So I mentioned this, but I want to emphasize it. Live fact-checking works because politicians repeat claims that have been checked before. I'm sure this is true in Italy. It's definitely true in the United States, that politicians just say the same things over and over again, even when they've earned false ratings for them from the fact checkers. So our first project was FactStream, and FactStream is the name that we're going to use for any app that delivers live fact-checking. And the goal for fact-checking is, the goal for FactStream is to have a platform for live fact-checking, a single app that all fact-checkers can use. So this is not just for the Washington Post or not just for the Associated Press, but it's a single platform that everybody can use. And a key goal is we want to help the fact-checkers. We want to drive traffic to their articles, because many of them are for-profit organizations that benefit when they get more clicks, and so if we can drive traffic to them, we're helping them. So the first version, we wanted to create a minimum viable product for a live pop-up fact-checking of an event. And so our goal was to do this for the State of the Union address. And that was a pretty ambitious goal, because we started our project last fall, and the State of the Union was on January 31st. And so we really had to hustle to get it done. The initial version was human-powered, and meaning that it's not using voice to text, it's not using natural language processing, it's using the fact-checkers themselves who are hearing the claims when they listen to the speech, and then realizing, hey, we have fact-checked that before. The State of the Union address was ideal because the State of the Union address is given to journalists ahead of time. So at about 9 p.m., about 10 minutes before Donald Trump began speaking, they emailed all the journalists a copy of the speech. And so that allowed the fact-checkers to go through and identify claims that Trump was going to say and be ready to launch those, so to speak, to launch notifications about them in our app. Now, future versions of this app will be automated, and that's our goal, to use the technology like in Alexa to convert voice to text, match against our database. So our first version, which came out in January, was live events only. It was a partnership with the Washington Post, PolitiFact, and FactCheck.org, and we conducted a beta test during the State of the Union. Now, our goal for the beta test was not to get 1 million users, but to get enough users that we could get some useful feedback from people about what they got and what they wanted. How are we doing on time here? Good. So we embarked on a really ambitious development schedule where our developer Chris Guess, who was marvelous and built this under tremendous time pressure, he just worked nonstop, around the clock, in these incredible coding binges to get the app built in time. And so by the middle of January, we began to get versions of the app and began to do bug testing. And this is when I really began to get nervous because we had a fixed date. It had to be ready on January 31st. And as late as 5 days before, we still hadn't built the interface for the fact checkers to input their notifications into it. But Chris hustled, and over the weekend got everything built. We were still doing bug testing and submitted our final version to Apple Sunday night at 11 p.m. and the speech was Tuesday night at 9 p.m. So less than 48 hours, and we submitted it to Apple, and then we prayed that Apple would approve the final version to eliminate the last bugs. So one of the coolest things was seeing it in the App Store and seeing the screen grabs of it, and there were a variety of milestones where we were really excited to see the app getting approved and built. I've been the project director on 3 different apps, and this was the most fulfilling because we did it under such an aggressive time schedule. Okay, I'm going to try to show you a live version of the app. going to work. Okay. Plug the HDMI into there. Okay, so this is what the app looks like. So when you come to FactStream, the first thing you see is a list of the events. In this case, there are no live events taking place today, but there is the archived event of the 2018 State of the Union address. So I'll show you what that looked like. So if you had this app in front of you during the president's speech, you would see the fact check scroll as new fact checks appeared. So every new fact check would pop in, and usually within 1 minute of when Trump made the comment, so the timing was very good. We don't have a more precise time. We think that in most cases it was about 30 seconds. So very timely. While you remembered what he had said, the fact check popped in. So there were two kinds of fact checks that PolitiFact and the Washington Post and factcheck.org were triggering, so I'll show you both. One is what we called a quick take. So sometimes fact checkers knew the general facts of what Trump was saying, but had not done an actual fact check before and rated it. So in that case, they did what we called a quick take. So I'm going to show you this one. We enacted the biggest tax cuts and reform in American history. Factcheck.org had not rated that before, but they wrote this. It is not the biggest tax cut. It is the 8th largest cut since 1918 as a percentage of gross domestic product and the 4th largest in inflation-adjusted dollars. So really valuable. And this was an important boast that the president made, and it wasn't true. If you had our app, you knew that right away. PolitiFact had actually done a fact check of that claim, and so in that case, the PolitiFact had just input the URL to its fact check, and it pops up this way. So there's Trump's quote, and the related fact check was when Trump said the GOP plan he supports is the biggest tax cut in U.S. history, and PolitiFact had rated that false on its truth-o-meter. And so there is the fact check that PolitiFact had done. If you're watching the event and you wonder, really, I'd like to know more about that, you could click read, and our app would take you to the fact-checking article, and you could read how PolitiFact reached that conclusion that the statement was false. And you can see PolitiFact had assessed where the current tax proposal fit, et cetera, and then down at the bottom you'll see there's the Share the Facts widget. So the Share the Facts code is critical in this app because it's what our content management system looks for to populate the fields in the app. So take it back to the main screen, and you can see, I think we did a total of 32 fact check notifications during the debate, including one on the Democrat, Joe Kennedy, who gave the Democratic response to the State of the Union. So we were very pleased. The feedback we got on this was very favorable, but we did get some really good suggestions that we're incorporating in the next version. And the suggestions we got had to do with kind of basic UX, how we identify the quick takes, whether the fact checkers can show the conclusion of the quick takes, and so in our next version that will be much improved. The other idea we got, and this was from Eugene Kiley, the director of factcheck.org, he said, well, you have this app and you're just going to use it for live events. Why not use it for all fact checks every day? And so it was a very simple idea. Eugene's idea was just to take fact checks that use the fact checking schema and put them in the app. So we're going to be doing that starting in a couple of weeks. We've been doing some feedback sessions with users, and we will be rolling out a new version of the app. And you can get this app in the App Store. Okay, so told you about FactStream. So I think the big lesson to us about FactStream is that we can use a device as a good way of getting people instant information, instant fact checks, but they want summaries of it. And so just as you have summaries in many of the fact-checking sites, like I know Pagella Politica, others in Italy have used ratings. People want those ratings in their fact-checking. So I told you we had about 3,000 users. We had no technical problems, save one. We had a database glitch in July in our Share the Facts database that triggered a couple of wrong prompts for the fact checkers, but that's something that we've fixed. And so now we are developing this new feature that Eugene suggested, where you'll see, this is the mock-up of the new version, you'll see the widgets for the latest fact checks every day. So it won't be for live events, it'll just be, hey, I wonder what all the fact checkers have checked today. You'll be able to come to our app and see it, and then click to go to the fact checker sites. So next up after this, we want to build a similar app for Apple TV. And the idea is that this live fact checking that we've always dreamed of a television, of either speech on television or a campaign ad, that can happen. So we envision something like this, where a politician is doing an interview program or giving a speech, and fact checks pop up on top of the screen. Now this becomes a little trickier, not technically, because it's really just putting Chiron on top of a television program. What is the challenge here is licensing. We're going to have to get rights to the program, so we're probably going to have to partner with a media company that has live video of news events and is willing to let us play with it. Another project we're doing, it's called Truth Goggles. This is done by the Bad Idea Factory, and this is kind of our research and development arm within the Tech and Check Co-op, where we are trying to get, we're trying to consider different ways to present fact checks. In the United States, fact checking is very popular by people on the left. It is less popular with people on the right. And so we have to try to find ways to present the fact checks in less aggressive ways. So instead of saying, pants on fire, your guy got a pants on fire, our Truth Goggles project is going to test different ways of presenting the fact checks that may be more palatable to people from different parts of the political spectrum. And the ultimate dream is this, to have FactStream at the point where you could hold it up to a live event, it would hear what the politician said, and it would pop up the fact checks automatically. All right, the last part I'm going to talk about now is what we used to call the robot intern. So we now call it Tech and Check Alerts using ClaimBuster. So ClaimBuster is a brilliant algorithm written by Chen Kai, who I told you about earlier, and it grew out of a conversation that we had, Chen Kai and I, where he asked, what do fact checkers need? And I said, they need interns. They need college students who can go through massive amounts of transcripts and look for claims that the fact checkers might want to check. Because this is the ammunition in the war of talking points in the United States are factual claims. These guys basically just throw factual claims back and forth at each other. And the fact checkers spend a lot of time trying to find the most interesting and important claims that politicians are making. So I suggested that we try to automate that. And so Chen Kai came up with a really novel way to do that. The first thing he did is he took all of the debate transcripts of presidential debates since 1960, and he parsed the sentences. And then he had students and others look at each sentence and categorize it. Is it a factual claim that's important? Is it a factual claim that's not important? Or is it not a factual claim? So they had 3 categories. So then he took all of the important factual claims and he used machine learning to identify the attributes of the sentences that were unique. So factual claims are more likely to be past tense. They're more likely to contain numerals. They're more likely to have certain words in them, like unemployment and Republican and Democratic and economy. So he used that to write an algorithm that he called ClaimBuster. So ClaimBuster is the algorithm that we submit sentences to every day. So that was the first step. And ClaimBuster is a great tool, and you can actually go to the ClaimBuster website and paste text in. And what ClaimBuster does is, using the algorithm, assign a score to each sentence from 0 to 1. The higher the number, the more likely it is to be a claim that fact checkers might want to check. So, ClaimBuster came out in 2015 probably, and sat around for a couple of years because Chen Kai had moved on to some other things. And so we realized that fact checkers were not using it because they didn't want to take the time to grab the text, paste it in the ClaimBuster box, and do all this work. So we said, well, we can do that work for them. We can automate this. And so we took Duke computer science students and had them write scripts that scrape content off of websites, parse it into sentences, and then submit it to ClaimBuster. So we do this now from a couple different places, from legislative transcripts. So in this case, the transcripts from the US Congress. So the congressional record is a record of every word said on the floor of the House and Senate. So we've just started running that through ClaimBuster. And also TV news transcripts. So the TV news channels are constantly transcribing what you're seeing on cable news. And so we take that every day, we run it through ClaimBuster, and pick out the sentences that get the highest score. So all of this, like I said, is written by our students. A student named Asa Royal did this particular one. So you can see here's one. If you go back to this transcript, this is an interview with Rick Santorum. Rick Santorum is a former United States Senator and is a frequent commentator on CNN. And he made this claim that there were 10 million people who would have a path to staying in the United States indefinitely in this proposal that Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham made. So this has to do with immigration and DACA, what is often called the Dreamers Act. So ClaimBuster, so when we ran these transcripts through ClaimBuster, ClaimBuster loved that sentence. And so here it is in our top 15 that day. Rick Santorum, there it is. I mean, there were 10 million people that would have some path to staying in this country. So now we every day at 10 a.m. Eastern US time send an email to all the fact checkers, to the New York Times, Associated Press, Washington Post, PolitiFact, factcheck.org, with the top 15 claims that were said in the previous 24 hours. So this is an excerpt from it. The email looks like this. And so every day the fact checkers get this in their inbox. They don't have to do any work. All they have to do is open the email, scan it, and see if there's anything they want to check. There often is. ClaimBuster is so good that it finds things that the fact checkers otherwise aren't seeing. So in this case, that Rick Santorum fact check was spotted by Glenn Kessler of the Washington Post, who put it in this fact check here. So it's right here. There were 10 million people that would have been on some path to staying in this country. So, and I should have put the full article there because I don't know what Glenn's conclusion was. But this is proof. So this is a case where a Washington Post fact check was chosen by a bot. So that is in use today, and we are expanding ClaimBuster. We're using it on posts on Facebook by U.S. senators. We're going to be expanding our use of Facebook. We're also looking at, I started to show you this, we're also, in addition to providing it by email, we also are now providing it in a Slack channel that the fact checkers can opt for if they use Slack. And this is just a great way that's saving them time. Glenn Kessler is basically a two-person operation. It's Glenn and another fact checker. He doesn't have time to look through all the CNN transcripts, so the bot does it for him. So we're very excited about that. And so I'll just conclude by saying we have some big goals here, but we're really proud that we're really doing things. We're past the stage in automation in journalism where we're just dreaming. We're at a point now where we're actually doing things, and I'm really happy to be at that point and be happy to take any questions that you have about any of this. Yes?
About the little piece of code you put on the HTML pages of the fact checkers.
Yes.
What prevents, for example, Breitbart News to add the same piece of code and claim that this story by Breitbart is also a fact check? And if something prevents it, is there a whitelist? Is there a selection of the editors that participate to the project? And I have the second question. The projects you are presenting are really great. I mean, it's amazing work, but you seem to be a lot into apps. I mean, Alexa, iOS. Why did you not select more open technology like email notifications or desktop browser notifications? Is it because your partners ask them to produce Apple apps or Amazon stuff?
Sure.
That's the two questions. Thank you.
You bet. So I'll take the first question first. So is there anything to prevent publishers from using the schema who may not be fact checkers? No, there's nothing to prevent them. They can. Schema, by its very nature, is open, and that's a good thing. The whole idea of Schema is that publishers can just, it's basically like putting an extra headline on their articles that says, you know, this is a fact check on this statement, on this person, whatever. So any publisher can use it. It is up to Google and Bing and any app builder to decide which publishers they want to include in their products. So Google has dealt with this issue many times because everyone is trying to game Google search results, often using their own schema. And in the case of Google News, Google has often had to decide what is a news organization that should be included in Google News and what isn't a news organization. So that's totally up to Google. And in terms of the app, it's totally up to us who we use. So if Breitbart started doing fact checking and wanted to put the fact check schema on its articles, that would, they would be perfectly able to do that. Let's see, and the other question was about the apps and why we're building for these platforms. So we want to build everything for everybody everywhere. We wanted to start with the most common app platform, iOS, because that's where people are accustomed to this kind of thing. One of the things that we found with, and I'm sure you've seen this, browser extensions are easier to build and more open, but the usage rate is really low. Like your aunt is not going to be using a browser extension probably. It's usually just people who are pretty technically sophisticated. So we wanted to start with a platform that had a pretty big audience, iPhone and iPad, and we will build for other platforms. So we're considering doing one for Brazil, and that would mean doing an Android version because the Android accounts for about 75% of the phone market in Brazil. But we'll do anything. And it's a recognition that people are getting political information in many different places. So what we used to think of as the television, is really just a screen. And that screen may be your computer. It may be an old television or, an old idea of a television that still gets a cable or broadcast signal. So we want to try to do everything and see where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. All right, another question. Yes? She's going to bring you the mic here.
What are the criteria for sufficient truly source for fact checks? For example, it's easy to confirm some numbers or statistics, but you had an example of Donald Trump saying he was against of the war in Iraq. How can you confirm that he was always against of it?
Sure. So, of course, that varies depending on the nature of the statement. Some fact checks are very simple. One of my favorite easy ones to check was no one, a claim by a politician, no one in the debate mentioned education. So that was basically I just went to the transcript of the debate and searched the word education, schools, teachers. The guy was right, so he got it true. Some fact checks are easy like that. Other fact checks, so the one you're talking about actually doesn't take that much time because using archives, you can go back and see what did Donald Trump say about the war in Iraq in 2003. And often that is documented either in news coverage or in transcripts. And in that case, the fact check was originally done by a great reporter at CNN who had found Donald Trump's radio interviews that he did on the Howard Stern show. Other checks, though, take a long time. Can take more than a day. A typical fact check takes about one full day, 8 hours, to research and write. But others take longer. We've had, at PolitiFact, we had one where a reporter took almost 2 weeks to do a single fact check that was a really, really good one, but it took him a while to get everything. So, so that takes a while. But what matters for automation is every fact check is in the database, and that the database is the secret sauce of what we want to do for automation. Yes, right here. Boy, I'm so impressed that you're still here. Not that many people have left for wine yet, but
we will soon. No
yeah.
Thank you. How easy is it to get transcripts from news corporations? Because is that agreements, or is it something that in the US CNN makes available to everybody? And then second part of the question, do you also do some kind of speech to text translation from videos from YouTube, reports and news, etc., to feed then the fact checking?
Right. Great questions, and you're getting to what is sort of the a challenging piece of what we're doing. So some broadcasters, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, put some or all of their transcripts on the web. So that's great when they do that. Others don't, and you can get human-created transcripts. So these are actually, people who have watched the show and typed in real time or slowed down the, word for word what they're hearing. So this takes a lot of resources to create. You can get transcript services. We haven't ventured into that world yet since we're just getting started with transcripts, but that has, those are the cleanest. So, we all know if you've worked with data, whether it's databases from government or databases input by college students or whatever, that data can be messy. Transcripts can be messy. Even the good ones are messy. The names are not consistent, the way, or there isn't, sometimes there's a colon after the person's name, sometimes there's a semicolon, So that's challenging. Have we begun to use voice-to-text transcripts? Not yet, but we will next. And that brings in a whole different messy area because, if you've ever, I see it when I would go to my dentist's office, they would have the sound off, but they'd have the closed caption running. And so, as the dentist is drilling into my teeth, I'm seeing these terrible voice-to-text conversions where they're just getting words wrong. And we know, if you have an iPhone, you have Siri, that Siri makes a lot of mistakes. So that technology still has a ways to go. And what we hope to do to test that is use the TV archive, which is part of the Internet Archive, and they were one of our original partners, and it's a marvelous source. You can go to the TV archive and put in search terms, and it will pull from this closed captioning. If you put in my name, and PolitiFact, you'll get every time I was on television in the time that they have. So we're going to try that, but it will be messy. Yes?
Is it now resourced only in English? And continue my questions. News of what countries you checking for now, and what is the roadmap for future?
Sure. So right now, yes, just right now, Share the Facts and the Schema can be done in any language. So, and we have partners in Italy, Pagella Politica, Agit, is it Agit? How do you say it? Agit, maybe one other that they use the schema. In Italian, we have it in Spanish, in Spain, and in Latin America. We have it in German, French, so the schema can be in any language. Our apps are initially just in English, but we hope to do other languages, and then ultimately make them available open source so that you could convert them to, once we get them fully built, so that you could convert them to any language. All right, maybe take one more? Just one more, okay.
Thank you. And so, can a new organization join in the Fact Checker Club?
I'm sorry?
Can a new organization join in your club, Fact Checker Club, and use this tool?
Yes, eventually. So right now we're partnering just with the main fact checkers in the United States, but we do hope to make this available anywhere to any fact checker, and that's part of our commitment as part of our grant is we built this so everybody can use it. So once we get it fully built out, yes, we would make it available, and fact checkers could use it. All right. Well, I just want to thank you very much for coming, particularly this late. Thank you.